Hi, welcome back to the channel. Today's topic is don't blame God. Something happened recently. BB got GI stasis again, and he got it previously 2 times in a row. And I had thought that God showed me a sign that it would never happen again. But it's actually quite common in rabbits. So this is also going to be an informational video too, to help anyone who has a pet rabbit that is getting a little older and may start to have GI stasis. It's lethal for them. So if you don't address it right away, my first recommendation is you should take them to a vet, because a vet would know exactly what to do and they would give you the best advice. So as a disclaimer, I'm not a vet. I'm just sharing my experience and what I did, experiencing it now 3 times with him. So the first 2 times I took him to several vets, emergency, like it happened late at night, and so like a 24-hour vet place. And okay, fast forward to this time. So what I do now is as soon as and I should have seen the signs. So if the poops start getting smaller, then that's a sign. Cut off all wet foods like lettuce and especially sugars. Just like let them eat hay, and make sure that they're still eating, because it's super important that bunnies eat food and that they poop, because their digestive system has bacteria to break down the hay, and if they don't poop, then that bacteria, it's like an overgrowth, and then it can actually poison them. So I called out of work and I needed the money, but he's more important to me than money. I called out of my shift and I just monitored him. I made sure he had a lot of water to stay hydrated. And this time he wouldn't even eat herbs. So I suggest dry herbs. There are a bunch of safe herbs that you can feed him that also are antibacterial, and they have actually gut stimulating properties, like parsley, rosemary. The ones I give him are oregano, thyme, a little bit of mint, a real little bit of dill. And yeah, I think that's about it. There's a list on my Instagram if you go there of all the herbs I give him, but I make a mixture and I give it to him. Usually when he's in that state, like he doesn't want to eat anything, that's a good indication that they have that. Then he will have the herbs, but he didn't even want the herbs this time. So it's water. Try to get them to eat as much hay as possible. I mean, even if you have to lie there with them and put hay in front of their face constantly until they get so irritated that they take a bite of a piece. Like, it's that serious. And always have critical care on hand. Okay, it's this formula you can get from a vet. I think you have to buy it from a veterinarian, but it's called critical care. And so I had the star anise flavor, which they don't like. There's a banana and apple flavor, and there's a star anise. But when I did research, the star anise is actually, there's a benefit to that herb when they're in that state. So at first I was like, oh, I wish I had the apple banana because he'd like it better. But it turned out to benefit him because it actually had a healing property in the star anise herb. Okay, so that's what I do. Star anise critical care mixed with water, syringe fed. So I have to syringe feed him every so many hours. That's why it's really good to go to a vet too, because they can give you the exact dosage. And another thing to always have on hand are baby gas drops. So the brand I have is Mylicon, I think, and it's simethicone is the ingredient in it, because when their systems get backed up like that, they're big bubbles. And small bubbles, you want to break those down into smaller bubbles so that it can pass through their system. So the gas baby drops always have on hand, the critical care, and the herbs. The herbs are super helpful in their healing. So this time, I knew what it was. I didn't take him to a vet, but remember, my first recommendation is take them to the vet, especially if it's the first time that your rabbit's going through this. But what I did was the baby gas drops right away to break down those gas bubbles, and hand feed him the critical care to make sure that his system, like, he was getting food. And that's another thing, is it could be gas or it could be an obstruction, like, because they clean themselves. If it's like fur or something, an obstruction in their system, then you don't want to force feed them, because that could be even more detrimental to that situation. So my first recommendation, take them to a veterinarian, because then your vet can let you know, like, if they are pooping a little bit, then usually there's no obstruction, but a vet would know best, so please take him to the vet. But my experience, he was pooping but real little bit, so I was like, okay, it's not an obstruction, it must be gas. So I gave him the gas drops right away, and then I force fed the critical care. Not that much, because just in case on the initial feeding. And I tried to give him the herbs. He didn't want it. Like before, he actually had the herbs, but this time he didn't want it. And I made sure he had lots of water, because the water is super important too, in order for their systems to just get something in their system, so that, you know, the bacteria is just not multiplying. I think I'm gonna do the video separate on the spiritual aspect of this, because this is for bunny emergency information. It's good to have. He healed real quick, but God told me that it wouldn't happen again, but it did. And so I kept asking him why. So I'm gonna make a part 2 of this video, and it's gonna go over the spiritual part of why it did happen, even though God showed me and told me that it wasn't going to happen. Okay, so listen to part 2 if you want to know the spiritual side of it.